Princess Lyra of the Zelari Empire stood on the edge of the crystal balcony, her hands gripping the smooth, glowing railing. Below her, the city shimmered with alien light, 1,000 towers of translucent crystal reflecting the pale glow of the twin moons. The people of the empire called her Unfit, a title she had learned to hear without protest, but it still weighed heavily on her heart. She was different from her royal siblings. While they moved with precision, obeyed the rigid laws of the empire, and displayed strength in every ceremony, Lyra had always felt a strange pull toward curiosity, empathy, and a desire to see the world beyond rules. It made her an outsider in her own home. Her brother, Prince Kael, the heir to the throne, was already performing the ceremonial duties she dreaded. He radiated power and control, a model of the perfect Zelari ruler. Lyra's heart twisted as she watched him, wishing she could be like that, but knowing she never could. Today was the day of the trial of worth, a public ceremony where the youngest princess was expected to prove her strength and intelligence. Failing this trial would mark her as weaker than the people expected of a royal, something Lyra had experienced before, but the fear of failure never dulled. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward. The balcony opened into the great ceremonial hall, a vast space of shimmering crystal where thousands of eyes waited. Her people watched silently, their faces blank, waiting to see if she could stand among the mighty rulers of their empire. Her first task was the test of skill. A series of floating platforms appeared before her, glowing with an energy she had never fully controlled. She stepped onto the first one, focusing on balance and precision, but her hand brushed the wrong panel and the platform trembled beneath her. A wave of embarrassment washed over her as she stumbled, catching herself at the last moment. Some of the spectators murmured, their voices cold and judging. "Pathetic," someone whispered, and Lyra felt her chest tighten. The next challenge was the test of mind. A puzzle appeared in the air, a complex geometric formation that needed to be solved within seconds. Lyra concentrated, her mind racing, but she hesitated. Her fingers brushed the wrong pattern and the puzzle collapsed in a burst of light. The spectators gasped. It was over. Her trial had ended in failure. Lyra bowed her head, her heart heavy. Her siblings watched silently, some with pity, others with quiet disappointment. Prince Kael's eyes met hers briefly, and she could see no sympathy there, only expectation, and perhaps relief that it was not him being judged. She retreated to the gardens after the ceremony, where the crystal flowers reflected the pale moonlight. Lyra wandered through the glowing petals, trying to calm her racing heart. She hated feeling weak. She hated that her own people, her own family, thought her unworthy, and yet she could not stop herself from dreaming. The next day, a delegation arrived from a distant world, the humans. Zelari rulers had rarely visited Earth, preferring their isolation, but this mission was different. The council wanted to study humans and see if they could be allies in trade and knowledge. Lyra was assigned to accompany the delegation. When she first met Elias, he was studying a strange holographic map. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, calm, curious, and unafraid of her royal status. He looked at her without awe or fear, treating her as an equal, not a princess. "Your empire is beautiful," he said softly, glancing at the glowing crystals of the palace. "But it must feel lonely being up here so far from everything else." Elias looked at her with genuine interest, and for the first time she felt a spark of connection. "You could say it is lonely," she admitted, "and sometimes suffocating. Everyone expects me to be perfect, but I never feel that way." Lyra had never considered that her differences might be a source of power. Humans were strange, she thought, and yet there was wisdom in their perspective. Over the next few weeks, Lyra and Elias spent more time together. He asked about her life, her dreams, and her fears. She listened as he described the human world, its mountains, oceans, and forests. She realized she had never thought about a world beyond the crystal towers, the rigid rules, and the expectations of her people. Lyra taught him about Zelari culture, their ceremonies, and the ways of the court. She found herself laughing more than she had in years. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a princess, not as a failure, but as Lyra. But the empire did not forgive weakness easily. Whispers began circulating, the princess who failed the trial of worth, the princess who spent time with a human outsider. Some advisors suggested that Lyra's behavior threatened the dignity of the throne. Then came the warning. During a quiet evening in the palace, Lyra received a message from an anonymous source. A conspiracy was forming, aiming to exploit her unfitness to remove her from the line of succession, or worse. The words were stark and cold. "Do not trust your court. Do not trust even your family." The hallways of the palace, which had always felt vast and safe, suddenly seemed like a maze of shadows and danger. Elias found her soon after, sensing her distress. "Lyra, what's wrong?" he asked gently. She hesitated, but finally showed him the message. His brow furrowed. "This is serious," he said. "You need to be careful, but you're not alone. I'll help you however I can." Her heart was a storm of doubt and determination. She had failed the trial of worth, been ridiculed by her people, and faced threats from those she thought she could trust. Yet a spark of courage ignited within her. She would not run, she would not hide. Lyra did not yet know how she would prove herself, or if the Empire would ever accept her, but one thing was clear. She would face the coming trials with Elias by her side. And for the first time, the word unfit no longer felt like a curse. Perhaps it was the beginning of something more, a chance to redefine herself and the very meaning of power. As the moons reflected on the crystal towers, Lyra whispered to the wind, "I will prove them wrong. I will show them who I truly am." Lyra's journey had started, not as the perfect princess the Empire expected, but as the one they least believed in. And sometimes, the ones they underestimate the most hold the greatest strength. The wind carried a faint whisper from the council chambers, echoing through the crystal halls. "The unfit princess, she may yet rise." Princess Lyra walked quietly through the corridors, her hands brushing against the smooth walls. Each step echoed her growing unease. She could feel the weight of the council's whispers, the disapproval of her siblings, and the eyes of those who believed her unfit. The bond she had begun to form with Elias, the human who saw her as more than a princess, had become a secret lifeline. Together, they were planning ways to understand the strange warnings she had received, and to uncover the conspiracy that threatened her. Elias had been allowed to remain in the palace as an observer, a rare exception, but their time together was limited. Guards watched every hallway, and curious eyes often followed them. The world of the humans and the world of the Zelari felt as far apart as stars in the sky, but somehow they had found a connection. "Lyra," Elias whispered one evening as they walked through the hidden gardens, the crystal petals glowing under the moons. "You can't face this alone. You must let me help you. You just have to be yourself." Advisors and nobles whispered behind folded hands, their eyes flicking to her as she passed. She had been called to a private meeting, a chance to show that she was not just the princess who failed, but one capable of contributing to the empire. The council had grown concerned about the rumors of unrest. Strange shadows had appeared in the outer regions of the empire, twisting the crystal forests into dark forms. Reports suggested that these shadows were not natural. They were the beginning signs of a curse, a dark energy that thrived on fear, doubt, and hidden resentment. "Princess Lyra," Counselor Varen said, his sharp voice cutting through the tense room, "you have shown unpredictability. But this crisis requires leadership, wisdom, and courage. Will you stand with us to investigate these disturbances?" To them, Lyra's unpredictability was dangerous. Yet deep down, Lyra felt determination. The curse that was spreading through her empire might be the first test where her differences, her empathy, her intuition, her ability to see connections others missed, could be an advantage. That evening, Elias joined her in the hidden training halls where the princess practiced in secret. Unlike the ceremonial spaces, these halls were dimly lit and free from judgment. Floating platforms and energy fields hovered in the air, remnants of past trials designed to test royal heirs. "Let's see if we can turn your weakness into strength," Elias said, smiling faintly. "We'll combine your agility with some human strategies. You might surprise them yet. But we have to be careful if anyone sees this." For the first time, Lyra felt a new kind of power. She was not the perfect princess of legend, but someone different, someone who could blend worlds and perspectives, someone who could challenge expectations without losing herself. But the darkness of the empire was never far. One night, as Lyra and Elias walked along the balcony overlooking the crystal city, a shadow moved across the moonlight. A whisper reached Lyra's ears, a warning that someone was spying on them. Before she could react, a hidden door opened, and an advisor she had trusted stepped out. His eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "So the unfit princess and her human companion believe they can solve problems the council cannot. How amusing." "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear. The advisor smiled thinly. "I am here to remind you that loyalty in this empire is rare and betrayal inevitable. If you continue your foolish alliance, both of you will pay a steep price." "We shall see," he said, disappearing into the darkness. Elias squeezed her hand. Lyra, we need to be more careful, but we can do this together. The next day, they ventured into the outskirts of the Empire to investigate the cursed forests. The trees, normally bright and crystalline, were twisted and dark, their jagged edges reflecting a strange black light. Whispers echoed in the wind like distant cries of fear and anger. Lyra felt the energy of the curse pressing against her. It amplified doubt, frustration, and insecurity. She stumbled slightly and the shadows seemed to reach for her. Focus on what is real, Elias said calmly. We can face this together. She could sense the feelings behind the curse, the fear of the people, the envy of the counselors, and she found a way to push against it. Elias watched her with admiration. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. Lyra opened her eyes, seeing the shadows retreating, the crystal forest beginning to shine again. She smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mixing in her chest. I think I can do this, she whispered, but danger was not done with them. From the shadows, a figure emerged, one of the conspirators behind the palace warning. He had come to capture Elias, believing that removing the human would weaken Lyra's resolve. Elias, Lyra shouted, moving quickly. She used the skills she had learned and the strength she had discovered, creating a barrier of light that pushed the conspirator back. Elias was safe, but the warning was clear. The enemy was closer than they had imagined. Returning to the palace that night, Lyra and Elias found the halls eerily quiet. The council's whispers had grown louder, spreading rumors about their secret training and their alliance. But Lyra felt no fear now. She had faced the darkness, protected the human she cared about, and discovered a strength within herself that the council could not understand. In the privacy of the hidden gardens, she turned to Elias. We can't stop now. If the Empire is threatened, if my people are in danger, we must face it together. And sometimes that was enough. Lyra knew the conspiracy within the palace was still at work. She knew the curse could grow stronger. But for the first time, she did not feel powerless. She had a plan, allies she could trust, and the courage to challenge those who called her unfit. As the twin moons rose higher, a chill wind whispered through the halls, carrying a faint, eerie voice. The princess who is not ready, she may yet become a force no one can stop. And with Elias by her side, perhaps she could prove to the Empire that being different was not a curse, but a gift. The shadows in the palace deepened, and the human princess's ally looked at her with unwavering trust. The forbidden bond they shared had become a source of strength, and the Empire itself would soon see that strength unfold. The night ended with one clear thought in Lyra's mind. This is only the beginning. The air in the Zelari Empire had grown colder. The crystal towers that once gleamed with soft light now cast long shadows that seemed almost alive. Princess Lyra walked through the palace halls with Elias by her side, each step measured and careful. The curse that had begun to spread through the outskirts of the Empire was growing stronger, twisting the crystal forests and darkening the skies. This is worse than I imagined, Elias whispered, his eyes scanning the eerie corridors. The shadows, they feel like they can reach inside your mind. They feed on fear, she said softly. And doubt, if I give in, they will overwhelm me, but I won't, not now, not ever. Lyra had never been considered strong by the Empire, and yet she knew she had no choice but to face it. The journey was treacherous. Floating bridges of crystal formed and collapsed beneath them, and twisted forms of shadow moved with unnatural speed. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she held Elias', but his presence steadied her. You are not alone, he said quietly. Remember that. You will never save anyone. She saw Elias being taken from her, the human who had given her hope and strength. Tears threatened, but she forced herself to breathe. These are illusions, she whispered. They are not real. I choose to see the truth. Slowly, the shadows began to retreat. They hissed and twisted, but they could not break her resolve. Elias guided her through the illusions, pointing out patterns in the shadows, teaching her to anticipate their movements. Together, they moved as one, a perfect balance of human ingenuity and Zelari instinct. At the center of the chasm, the architect of the curse revealed itself, a massive, shadowy figure, its form shifting like smoke. Its voice rumbled like thunder. Princess Lyra, you are unfit. You cannot protect anything. You will fail. I may not be what the Empire expects, but I am strong. I am not alone, and I will not let you destroy what I love. She focused on the light within herself, the feelings of trust and courage she had cultivated with Elias. The memories of their shared moments, the quiet walks through the hidden gardens, the laughter, the understanding, flooded her mind. With a deep breath, she extended her hands, and light poured forth from her fingertips, intertwining with Elia's energy. Together, they created a force that pushed against the darkness, illuminating the chasm with radiant colors. The shadow shrieked and writhed, unable to withstand the combined strength of love, trust, and courage. Step by step, Lyra advanced, facing illusions of failure and fear until she reached the center. She placed her hand on the heart of the curse, feeling its dark energy pulse and writhe. It tried to invade her mind, but she held firm, focusing on the truth of who she was. "You cannot control me," she said, her voice unwavering. "I am Lyra of the Zelari Empire. I am not perfect, but I am strong, and I will protect what I love." The crystal forests outside the chasm began to glow again, light returning to the Empire. Lyra felt exhaustion overwhelm her, but also a sense of triumph she had never known. She had faced the impossible and survived. Elias held her, supporting her as she collapsed into his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "You were amazing." "We did it," she corrected, "together." And most alarmingly, Elias had been targeted in their absence, ambushed by agents seeking to remove him from the Empire forever. Lyra rushed to his side, her heart pounding. He was hurt but alive, his human resilience holding him through the attack. She held him close, promising silently that she would never let anything happen to him again. "You shouldn't have been in danger," she said, voice trembling. "It should have been me." Her unfitness no longer seemed like a curse. It was a unique strength that had allowed her to survive the trial and protect the one she loved. Yet, the shadow of the palace conspirators loomed over them. The council would not forgive her independence easily, and rumors of her human ally's role would spark outrage among the more traditional factions. "We have to be careful," Elias said, his hand gripping hers. "But now you know your own strength. They cannot take that from you." In the following days, Lyra began to gather evidence of the conspiracy. She moved carefully, using her intelligence and empathy to read the people around her. Some were loyal, some deceived, and some outright dangerous. Yet she had a new weapon now, confidence in herself and the bond she shared with Elias. One night, standing on the palace balcony, she looked out over the city. The crystal towers reflected the light of the moons, and the air seemed clearer, freer than it had in months. She took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the empire in her veins. "I am not unfit," she whispered to herself. "I am Lyra. I will prove it, and I will protect this empire, and I will not be alone. And I will be with you always." A shadow moved among the halls, observing the princess who had faced the curse and survived. Plans were being made, and a storm was gathering. Lyra's journey was far from over. The trial of heart had strengthened her, but the empire still had secrets, dangers, and enemies she could not yet see. And the conspirators would strike again, testing not only her power, but her love, her courage, and the bonds she had forged. As she looked at Elias, she felt a fierce determination. No matter the shadows, no matter the threats, she would face them head-on. She would show the empire that being different was not a weakness, that trust and love could create a strength no one expected. And the whispers of the shadows seemed to pause, as if acknowledging that the unfit princess was no longer to be underestimated. Lyra tightened her grip on Elias' hand, and together they walked back into the palace. The trials were not over. The conspirators still moved in secret, but the princess had discovered her true power. And this time, she would not falter. The heart of the empire had been tested, and the outcast princess had risen. The palace of the Zelari Empire was tense with anticipation. The twin moons cast long, silver shadows across the crystal towers, illuminating the grandeur and the secrets hidden within. Princess Lyra walked through the halls with her chin high, her steps steady and purposeful. Gone was the hesitation she had once felt, the fear that she was unfit. The trials, the curse, and the bond with Elias had strengthened her in ways no ceremony could. Elias walked beside her, his presence a steadying anchor. He had seen her through the darkest moments of the curse, through doubt and betrayal, and he had never faltered in his belief that she could succeed. Together, they were ready to face the final challenge, confronting the conspirators who sought to destabilize the empire and reclaim the trust of the council and the people. The council chambers were filled with tension. Advisors and nobles whispered among themselves, eyes flicking toward Lyra. Many still doubted her, still questioned her strength, still remembered her failures during the trial of worth. But Lyra stepped forward with calm confidence, her gaze steady, her voice clear. "I know you doubt me," she began. "I know you believe I am unfit, but the Empire has tested me and I have faced what you could not. I have confronted the curse, faced illusions of fear, and I have survived. I am not perfect, but I am strong, and I will protect this empire no matter what. Together, she continued, we can overcome the shadows that threaten us, and together we will show the empire that strength is not only in power or perfection, it is in courage, loyalty, and love. Prove to us that your unfit nature can protect this empire. How can we trust that your human ally is not a weakness? Together, we are stronger than fear or shadow. She and Elias stepped forward, their hands joined, and they focused together. The shadows reacted immediately, writhing and hissing, sensing the combined strength of their bond. Lyra reached deep within herself, channeling the courage, empathy, and wisdom she had cultivated throughout her trials. Elias mirrored her energy, combining his human ingenuity with her Zelari intuition. Slowly, the shadows recoiled, shrinking under their combined light. Gasps echoed across the courtyard as the shadows dissipated entirely, leaving the crystal floors gleaming brighter than ever. The people watching, guards, servants, and even counselors, realized that the princess who had once been deemed unfit had not only survived the curse but had mastered it. A murmur ran through the crowd. She is strong, stronger than we imagined. And Elias has proven that alliances with those who are different can make us stronger, not weaker. Lyra moved with deliberate grace, pointing toward the counselors who had plotted against her. These individuals sought to destabilize our empire, to exploit my supposed weaknesses. Let it be known that betrayal will not succeed in the Zelari Empire. Justice will be served. The crowd watched in awe as the princess who had been mocked and underestimated reclaimed not only her honor but her authority. Later that evening, Lyra and Elias stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the city. The crystal towers gleamed in the light of the twin moons, reflecting the peace that had begun to return to the empire. "You did it," Elias said softly, his hand brushing hers. "You proved everyone wrong. And you've taught me about trust, perspective, and believing in someone when others do not. I couldn't have asked for a better companion." In the days that followed, Lyra's influence spread. She worked closely with the council, reforming policies, building alliances, and teaching that differences were not weaknesses but sources of strength. The human presence of Elias became symbolic of a new era, one where empathy, understanding, and love could coexist with tradition and power. The empire began to heal. The cursed forests flourished once more, and the crystal towers shone brighter than ever. Lyra was no longer the outcast princess, the one who had failed the trial of worth, but a leader respected, admired, and trusted by her people. And yet, she never forgot the lessons she had learned. Her journey had taught her that strength was not only measured in perfection, but in the courage to face fear, the wisdom to trust others, and the power to love without hesitation. One evening, as she walked through the gardens with Elias, the twin moons casting silver light over the crystal petals, Lyra paused. She took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the empire around her, and looked at the human who had never left her side. "Elias," she said softly, "whatever challenges come next, I want you with me. Always." She knew that the empire would continue to face trials, that shadows might rise again, and that conspiracies could still form. But she also knew that she would not face them alone. Her bond with Elias was no longer a secret, no longer forbidden. It was a symbol of hope, strength, and unity. The human and the princess, different worlds, different strengths, had found harmony, and together they could face anything. As the night deepened, the palace glowed with a quiet brilliance. The empire had seen the rise of a leader who had been called unfit, a princess who had proven that courage, empathy, and love were more powerful than fear and tradition. Lyra looked toward the horizon, the twin moons reflected in her eyes. The future was uncertain, but for the first time she felt ready for whatever it might bring. With Elias by her side, she could face any challenge, protect her people, and lead the empire into a new era. The unfit princess had risen. The empire had witnessed her strength, and the story of Lyra and Elias was only beginning.